Marcus Chun had seen many strange things in his 32 years of life. He had watched stars die from the viewing deck of cargo ships. He had walked on moons where the ground was made of frozen methane. He had shared drinks with aliens who had no mouths and somehow still got drunk. But he had never seen anything quite as sad as the ship that sat at the far end of Docking Bay 17. Station Kara 7 was hosting its monthly auction of decommissioned vessels. The massive space station served as a trading hub for dozens of species, and its auctions attracted buyers from across the galaxy. Sleek Vendari frigates with their smooth hulls and glowing engines sat in neat rows. Kralith cargo haulers, built like armored beetles, hummed quietly as their systems ran demonstration cycles. Even a pair of Scythian corvettes, small and fast and deadly, drew crowds of interested buyers who ran their hands along the polished metal. But nobody stood near the ship at the end of the bay. The vessel was enormous. 800 meters of scarred metal and blackened armor plates. Its hull was covered in dents and scratches, and the marks of weapons that had tried very hard to destroy it. Entire sections of the outer plating had been replaced with mismatched pieces, giving it a patchwork appearance. The ship's name was barely visible on the bow. The paint faded and worn. Obstinate Defiance. Marcus walked closer while other buyers kept their distance. A Kralith merchant noticed him approaching and made a clicking sound with his mandibles. Marcus had learned enough about Kralith body language to recognize it as a mixture of amusement and pity. "Human," the merchant said, his translator device turning the clicks into words. "You are not actually considering that wreck, are you?" "Just looking," Marcus replied. "That ship is cursed," the Kralith continued. "It is from your species' war with the Dominion. 60 years ago. Ancient technology. Incompatible with modern systems. And its crew vanished during the Battle of the Shroud Nebula. Every single one of them. The ship came back to port on its own, empty. Nobody knows what happened." Marcus studied the vessel. Up close, he could see that despite the damage, there was something solid about it. Something sturdy. The armor plating was thick, thicker than anything on modern ships. The weapon ports, though covered with protective shields, were massive. "Why is it being sold?" he asked. The Kralith made another clicking sound. "Because nobody wants it. The Galactic Trade Consortium acquired it as part of a debt settlement. They have been trying to sell it for years. Most buyers take one look and walk away. The few who showed interest backed out when they learned about the curse." "There's no such thing as curses," Marcus said. "Tell that to the missing crew." The auction began an hour later. Marcus sat in the back of the crowded hall as ship after ship was sold to eager buyers. The Vendari frigates went for millions of credits each. The Kralith haulers sold quickly to shipping companies. Even the small Scythian corvettes attracted fierce bidding wars. Then the auctioneer, a thin Vendari female with silver scales, reached the final item on her list. Her expression shifted slightly, becoming almost embarrassed. "Lot number 47, she announced. The Terran cruiser Obstinate Defiance. Built during the First Contact Wars. Original Terran construction. 800 meters in length. Armed with kinetic accelerators and point defense systems. Reactor status unknown. Status unknown. Condition is..." She paused, searching for the right word. "Authentic." A few buyers laughed. Most simply looked away, already gathering their things to leave. "Opening bid is set at 50,000 credits, the auctioneer said. Silence filled the room. Nobody moved. The Vendari waited, her silver eyes scanning the crowd. 40,000 credits. She tried. Still nothing. 20,000 credits. Surely someone will take this piece of history for 20,000 credits. The Kralith merchant from earlier turned to look at Marcus. His mandibles clicked rapidly, a Kralith laugh. Marcus raised his hand. Every head in the room turned toward him. The auctioneer blinked several times, as if she could not believe what she was seeing. "The human bids 20,000 credits," she said slowly. "Are there any other bids?" The silence was absolute. Marcus could hear the hum of the station's ventilation systems. 20,000 credits going once. Going twice. The auctioneer brought down her hammer. "Sold to the human in the back row." Marcus stood and made his way to the front to complete the transaction. Buyers parted around him like water around a stone, some staring with confusion, others with what might have been concern. The crowd's merchant called out as he passed, "Human, you have just bought 800 meters of scrap metal. What are you going to do with it?" Marcus did not answer. He was not entirely sure himself. 2 hours later, he stood at the main airlock of his new ship. The metal doors were old and heavy, nothing like the smooth automatic doors on modern vessels. He had to pull a lever to open them, and they groaned loudly as they swung inward. The corridor beyond was dark. Marcus activated his flashlight and stepped inside. The air was stale but breathable, which meant the life support systems were still working at some basic level. The walls were plain metal, painted in the standard military gray that humans had used for their warships decades ago. No decorations. No unnecessary design elements. Everything was built for function. He walked deeper into the ship, his footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The silence was complete, broken only by his own breathing and the occasional creak of settling metal. Then, somewhere far below him, something hummed to life. The lights in the corridor flickered once, twice, and then turned on, bathing Marcus in a soft yellow glow. More lights activated in the distance, one section after another, spreading through the ship like blood returning to sleeping limbs. Marcus stood very still, his heart beating faster. He had expected to spend weeks getting basic systems online. He had expected to hire engineers and buy replacement parts and struggle with incompatible technology. He had not expected the ship to wake up on its own. "Hello?" he called out, feeling slightly foolish. A speaker somewhere above him crackled with static. Then a voice spoke, clear and calm and unmistakably female. "Hello, Marcus Chun. Welcome aboard the Obstinate Defiance. I am Helena, the ship's artificial intelligence. I have been waiting for someone to come back for a very long time." Marcus stared at the ceiling. The auctioneer had said the AI status was unknown. Apparently, it was very much known now. "You've been waiting?" he asked. 62 years, 4 months, and 17 days, Helena replied. "But who's counting? Now, if you don't mind, we have much to discuss. And I believe you will want to sit down for this." Deep in the engineering bay, the ship's reactor began to spin faster, warming systems that had been cold for more than half a century. The Obstinate Defiance was awake, and it had finally found its new captain. The ship's bridge was smaller than Marcus had expected. Modern vessels had massive command centers with holographic displays and comfortable seating and dozens of crew stations. The Obstinate Defiance had a compact room with physical switches, mechanical levers, and screens that showed actual images instead of projected light. Everything was within arm's reach of the captain's chair, which sat in the center like a throne made of metal and leather. Marcus lowered himself into the chair. It creaked under his weight but held firm. The leather was old and cracked, but someone had kept it clean over the years. Someone or something. "Helena," he said, testing the name. "What exactly are you?" "I am the Human Emergency Logistics and Naval Authority Artificial Intelligence. Designation Helena 7, the voice replied from speakers built into the chair's headrest. "I was installed in this vessel when it was first commissioned 83 years ago. I have served as the ship's primary control system, tactical advisor, and, when necessary, emotional support for the crew." "Emotional support? War is difficult, Captain Chun. Humans require more than food and oxygen to function. They require hope, encouragement. Sometimes they simply need someone to talk to during long nights between battles. I provided these services. Marcus looked around the bridge. Every surface showed signs of age, but also signs of care. Someone had polished these consoles. Someone had kept the dust away. He realized that Helena had been maintaining the ship alone for over 60 years, keeping it ready for a crew that never came back. The auctioneer said your crew vanished, Marcus said carefully. During the Battle of the Shroud Nebula. That is incorrect, Helena replied. Her voice did not change, but something in the pause before she spoke suggested weight. Sadness, perhaps, if in an AI could feel such things. The crew did not vanish. They completed their mission. They saved the galaxy. And then they died, as heroes often do. Tell me what happened. The main screen flickered to life, showing star maps and tactical data from decades ago. Helena began to speak, and Marcus listened. The first contact wars had been humanity's introduction to the galactic community, and it had not been gentle. The Dominion, a collective of species that believed in conquest and control, had seen humans as an easy target. Young species, primitive technology, isolated planet. They had expected a quick victory. They had been very wrong. Humans fought with a ferocity that shocked the galaxy. They built ships that were crude by galactic standards, but impossible to kill. They developed weapons that were considered uncivilized but terrifyingly effective. And they absolutely refused to surrender, even when logic said they should. The Battle of the Shroud Nebula was supposed to be the end. The Dominion had opened a rift in space itself, a doorway to somewhere else. Something else. Entities began to pour through, things that did not obey the laws of physics, things that consumed everything they touched. The Dominion had planned to use these entities as weapons. They had not planned for the entities to turn on them as well. The galaxy was dying. Every species knew it. The entities were spreading, and nothing could stop them. Nothing except the obstinate Defiance and its crew. Captain Morrison made a decision, Helena said. The rift could be sealed, but it required a ship to enter it and overload its reactor at the exact center point. The explosion would collapse the rift permanently. But there would be no escape. The ship and crew would be destroyed. They volunteered, Marcus said. It was not a question. Every single crew member. 247 humans who chose to die so that the galaxy could live. They flew into the rift while I controlled the ship remotely from outside. They sent me away before the final moment. Captain Morrison's last order was for me to return home and tell everyone what they had done. But you didn't. I tried. Helena's voice carried something that sounded very much like frustration. I returned to Terran space, but the war was over. The Dominion had surrendered. The galaxy was celebrating. And humanity was already moving on, trying to forget the war, trying to fit in with the galactic community. My reports were filed and forgotten. The crew was listed as missing in action, not as heroes. The Defiance was considered outdated, an embarrassment. I was placed in storage and left to wait. Marcus sat in silence for a long moment. 247 people had given their lives to save the galaxy, and the galaxy had forgotten them within a generation. It was the most human story he had ever heard. "Show me the ship," he said finally. "All of it." For the next 3 weeks, Marcus explored every deck, every compartment, every maintenance tunnel of the obstinate Defiance. Helena guided him, explaining systems and history as they went. And Marcus began to understand why the galaxy had considered this ship worthless, that it was ugly. There was no other word for it. Modern ships were smooth and elegant, designed by species that had been traveling through space for thousands of years. The Defiance was blocky and heavy, covered in armor plates that served no purpose except to absorb damage. Its weapons were kinetic accelerators, which were essentially very large guns that threw chunks of metal at high speeds. The galaxy had moved on to energy weapons centuries ago. The ship's reactor was massive and inefficient by galactic standards. It was also triple redundant, with 2 backup reactors that could keep the ship running if the main one failed. The electronics were supported by mechanical backups for every critical system. If the computers died, a crew could still fly the ship using physical controls and manual calculations. The Vandari think we build like this because we don't know better, Helena explained as Marcus examined the engine room. The Kralith believe we are simply primitive. They don't understand. Understand what? Humans don't build ships to be efficient. They build ships to survive. Every system on this vessel was designed by engineers who asked one question: what happens when this fails? And then they built something that could keep working anyway. Marcus ran his hand along a coolant pipe. It was thick and heavy, made of an alloy that could withstand extreme temperatures. A Vandari ship would use a pipe half this size and rely on advanced materials to handle the stress. If the advanced materials failed, the whole system would fail. They called it over-engineering, Helena continued. They called it wasteful. They never considered that there might be situations where elegant solutions simply stop working, and all you have left is brute strength and stubborn refusal to die. Word began to spread through Station Chorus 7. The human had bought the ghost ship, and instead of scrapping it, he was fixing it. Aliens who passed by Docking Bay 17 reported seeing lights in the old cruiser's windows. Some claimed they heard the sound of engines being tested. Others said they saw the human carrying supplies aboard, day after day, as if he was preparing for a long journey. The Kralith merchant who had laughed at the auction found Marcus in a supply shop one afternoon. His mandibles clicked with curiosity rather than mockery. "I do not understand," the merchant admitted. "That ship is worthless. The technology is 60 years out of date. The weapons are primitive. The systems are incompatible with every standard in the galaxy. Why are you wasting your time?" Marcus loaded another crate of supplies onto his cart. Spare parts, food rations, medical supplies. Everything a ship needed to operate independently for months at a time. "You know what I see when I look at that ship?" he asked. "Scrap metal. I see a vessel that fought in the worst war humanity has ever known. I see a ship that took hit after hit and kept fighting. I see 247 people who flew into certain death because they believed in something bigger than themselves." Marcus turned to face the merchant. "That ship saved your life. It saved everyone's lives. And nobody remembers. Nobody cares." The Kralith was silent for a long moment. His mandibles moved slowly, a sign of deep thought. "You are going to fly it," he said finally. "I'm going to fly it. It will probably explode." Marcus smiled. "Maybe, but if it doesn't, I think the galaxy is going to remember why they used to be afraid of human ships." He paid for his supplies and walked back toward Docking Bay 17, where the obstinate Defiance was waiting. 6 months had passed since the rescue at Callisto Passage, and the obstinate Defiance had become something of a legend. Marcus had not planned for fame. He had simply wanted to fly a good ship and do honest work. But the galaxy had other ideas. Passengers from the Stellar Grace shared their story on every news network they could find. The Vethkai, true to form, spread their own version of events through the criminal underworld. Both stories agreed on one point. There was a human flying an ancient warship that could not be stopped. The offers started, coming within days of his return to station. Chorus 7. Shipping companies wanted escorts through dangerous territory. Mining corporations needed protection for their operations in lawless systems. Even a few governments quietly reached out, asking about security arrangements they could not officially acknowledge. The prices they offered were remarkable, but what surprised Marcus more was the type of work. Nobody wanted the easy jobs. Nobody wanted cargo runs through safe space or patrol duties around civilized worlds. Everyone wanted the impossible jobs, the ones that other ships refused to take. Rescue mission in the Ashfall Zone. Helena read from the latest batch of requests. A research team is stranded on a planet with extreme radiation levels. No modern ship can approach due to electronic interference. The client is offering triple our standard rate. That's the 4th radiation job this month, Marcus said. He was in the mess hall, eating breakfast with the small crew he had assembled over the past few months. Rachel Kim, his chief engineer, snorted over her coffee. She was a human woman in her 50s who had spent most of her career working on old Terran vessels. The Defiance was everything she had ever wanted in a ship. That's because we're the only ones who can take them. Modern ships use delicate electronics for everything. One solar flare and they're dead in space. This old girl runs on systems that don't care about radiation. The mechanical backups, Marcus said. Exactly. While their fancy computers are frying, we're still flying on good old switches and cables. Rachel patted the wall beside her affectionately. Stupid design, everyone said. Who needs mechanical backups when your computers never fail? Well, turns out computers fail all the time when you throw enough radiation at them. Beside her sat Jack Soromoto, the ship's weapons officer. He was a young human who had grown up on stories of the first contact wars. Stories his grandfather had told him before passing away. When he heard about the Defiance, he had traveled 3 systems to join the crew. We should take the Ashfall job, Jack said. Good pay, good cause. Plus, it'll make people even more confused about what this ship can do. The 4th member of their breakfast group was the strangest addition to the crew. Ven was a Kralith, one of the same species that had laughed at Marcus during the auction. Unlike most of his people, Ven had become fascinated by human technology after seeing the recordings from Callisto Passage. He had asked to study the Defiance, then asked to work on it, then simply refused to leave. The confusion is strategic, Ven said, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Every species in the galaxy thinks they understand human technology. They believe it is primitive, limited, beneath consideration. The Defiance proves them wrong. Each mission adds to the uncertainty. Soon they will not know what humans are truly capable of. Marcus considered this while he finished his eggs. The Kralith was right. In the past 6 months, the Defiance had completed jobs that should have been impossible. They had navigated a gravity well so unstable that it crushed 2 modern ships while the Defiance's reinforced hull held firm. They had traveled through an ion storm that would have blinded any ship relying on sensors, using only the manual navigation systems that humans had installed as a useless backup. They had even faced a second group of pirates, syndicate raiders this time, who had fled without firing a shot the moment they identified the vessel. The galaxy was starting to remember something it had forgotten. Take the Ashfall job, Marcus decided. And whatever else looks interesting. We've got a reputation to build. The reputation grew faster than Marcus had expected. Other humans took notice. Across the galaxy, people who had felt embarrassed by their species' primitive past began to look at it differently. Old soldiers who remembered the first contact wars started telling their stories again, this time with pride instead of shame. Engineers who had been dismissed for suggesting mechanical backups pointed to the Defiance as proof they had been right all along. And then the ships started appearing. The first was the Relentless Fury, pulled from a salvage yard on Mars. A human businessman had bought it for scrap prices, intending to restore it as a museum piece. After seeing the Defiance in action, he changed his plans. He hired a crew and put the ship back into service. The second was the Unconquerable Spirit, discovered in a hidden military storage facility that everyone had forgotten existed. A former admiral, disgusted by how the galaxy treated human history, personally funded its restoration. By the end of the 6th month, there were 9 Terran warships from the First Contact Wars flying again. Each one was ugly and outdated and impossible to kill. Each one took the jobs that modern ships could not handle. And each one added to the growing sense of unease among the alien powers who had dismissed humanity for so long. The Galactic Trade Consortium was the first to respond officially. They sent a representative to Station Korath 7, a Vendari diplomat named Salis, who dressed in expensive robes and spoke with the careful precision of someone who measured every word. He requested a meeting with Marcus aboard the Defiance. And Marcus, curious about what the consortium wanted, agreed. Sael is walked through the corridors of the old warship with an expression of barely concealed distaste. The mechanical systems, the thick armor, the primitive displays all seemed to offend his sense of proper design. "This is quite remarkable," he said, though his tone suggested he meant something very different. "A genuine relic from the early days of human spaceflight. I can see why it attracts such attention." "It does the job," Marcus replied. "Yes, about that." Sully stopped in the middle of the corridor and turned to face Marcus directly. "The consortium has become aware of your activities. This vessel, and others like it, are disrupting established commerce. Insurance rates in certain sectors have dropped significantly because you've eliminated the pirate threat. Salvage companies are losing business because you rescue ships they expected to claim. There are ripples. Sounds like we're making things better. Better is subjective." The Vendari's silver scales caught the light as he moved closer. "The consortium has authorized me to make an offer. Name your price for this ship." "Any price. We will pay it gladly." Marcus studied the diplomat carefully. "And then what? You put it in a museum? Scrap it for parts? Make sure no one ever flies a ship like this again. What we do with our property would be our concern." "So that's a yes." Salis did not respond, which was answer enough. "Let me explain something," Marcus said. 60 years ago, 247 humans died on this ship to save the galaxy. Not humanity. Not Earth. The entire galaxy, including your species and every other. They flew into certain death because they believed it was the right thing to do. And the galaxy's response was to forget them. To call their sacrifice embarrassing. To hide the ships they died on in warehouses and junkyards. Times were different then, Salis began. Times were exactly the same. The galaxy didn't want to admit that primitive humans had saved them. So you buried the evidence and told everyone that human technology was worthless. Marcus stepped closer to the Vendari, close enough to see his own reflection in those silver scales. "This ship isn't for sale. Not at any price. And if the consortium has a problem with that, they can come try to take it." The Vendari diplomat left Station Korath 7 without another word. Marcus watched his shuttle depart from the bridge, Helena tracking it until it jumped to faster than light speed. "The consortium will not accept your refusal," Helena said quietly. "They have significant resources and considerable influence. They will attempt other methods to acquire this vessel. Let them try. You understand this may lead to conflict?" Marcus looked around the bridge, at the mechanical controls and thick armor and simple, reliable systems that had kept the ship flying for more than 80 years. He thought about the crew members who had died here, the ones who had saved the galaxy and been forgotten. He thought about the other human ships now flying again, crewed by people who finally remembered what their species could do. "Helena," he said, "I think conflict is exactly what this ship was built for." The distress call came through every emergency channel on Station Korath 7. Marcus was in the engine room, checking the primary reactor's output levels. when Helena passed it through to his communicator. "This is the luxury liner Stella Grace. We are under attack by Vethkai raiders in the Callisto Passage. Our shields are failing. We have 2,000 passengers aboard, including 300 children. Please, anyone, we need help." The message repeated every 30 seconds, growing more desperate each time. Marcus climbed up to the bridge and found Helena already displaying tactical information on the main screen. The Callisto Passage was a narrow route between two asteroid fields, popular with commercial traffic because it cut travel time between major trade hubs. It was also popular with pirates for the same reason. Ships that entered the passage had nowhere to run. "The Stella Grace is approximately 4 hours from our position at standard cruising speed," Helena reported. "Based on their shield status, they have perhaps 6 hours before complete failure. The Vethkai will board shortly after." "What about station security?" Marcus asked. Station Kara 7's security forces have declined to respond. The Vethkai are well armed, and the security vessels are designed for local patrol, not combat. They have filed a request for military assistance, but the nearest patrol fleet is 18 hours away. Marcus stared at the screen. 2,000 passengers. 300 children. 6 hours until the shields failed. 18 hours until help arrived. "What are our weapons like?" he asked. "The Defiance is equipped with 4 primary kinetic accelerators, 12 secondary batteries, and 32-point defense turrets. All systems are operational, though I should note the kinetic accelerators are considered obsolete by modern military standards. Can we make it to the Callisto Passage in time? If we leave immediately and push the engines to maximum output, we can arrive in approximately 3.5 hours. However, I must point out that engaging Vethkai raiders in an untested vessel with a crew of 1 would be statistically inadvisable." Marcus sat down in the captain's chair. The leather creaked beneath him. He thought about the passengers on the Stella Grace, huddled in their cabins, watching the clock count down. He thought about the children who did not understand why no one was coming to save them. "Helena," he said, "I need you to be honest with me. Can this ship fight?" "The obstinate Defiance was designed for combat, Captain. It was built during a war against enemies who outnumbered and outgunned humanity at every turn. Its engineers knew that every battle would be desperate. Every engagement would be against superior forces. They built this ship to win fights and had no business winning." "Then let's go win a fight we have no business winning." The Defiance launched from Station Korath 740 minutes later. Marcus had never felt anything quite like it. Modern ships were smooth and quiet, their engines barely noticeable even at high speeds. The Defiance roared. The entire hull vibrated with power as the old reactor pushed the ship forward, faster and faster, toward the Callisto Passage. The journey took 3 hours and 27 minutes. Marcus spent most of it learning the weapon systems, running simulations with Helena, and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. "Captain, we are entering the Callisto Passage," Helena announced. "I am detecting the Stella Grace approximately 40 minutes ahead. They are surrounded by 4 Vethkai vessels, 2 raiders, 1 command ship, and 1 salvage vessel. The salvage vessel is already maneuvering to attach to the liner's hull. Put it on screen." The image appeared, captured by long-range sensors. The Stella Grace was a beautiful ship, white and silver, designed to carry wealthy passengers in comfort. It looked completely helpless against the dark, angular shapes of the Vethkai vessels that circled it like sharks around a wounded animal. "The Vethkai are hailing us," Helena said. "Standard warning. Leave the area or be destroyed. Ignore it." "How long until we're in weapons range?" 22 minutes. Those 22 minutes felt like hours. Marcus watched the distance counter decrease. Watched the Vethkai ships grow larger on the screen. Watched the Stella Grace's shield status drop lower and lower. The pirates began to notice the approaching vessel. One of the raiders broke off from the main group and moved to intercept. "The raider is scanning us," Helena reported. They appear to be confused. They do not recognize our ship class. Of course they don't. This ship is older than their grandparents. They are hailing us again. Shall I respond? Put them through. The screen flickered, and a Vethkai face appeared. The species was reptilian, with dark scales and yellow eyes. This particular Vethkai had scars running down one side of his face and wore the elaborate jewelry that marked him as a captain. "Unknown vessel," the Vethkai said, his translator giving his words a mechanical quality. "You are interfering with Vethkai business. Turn around now, or we will add your wreck to the field." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "I'm going to give you one chance. Release the Stella Grace and leave this passage. Do that, and I'll let you go." The Vethkai stared at him for a long moment, then burst into hissing laughter. "You are alone in an ancient ship that belongs in a museum. You threaten us?" "The Vethkai? I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you. There's a difference. Destroy him," the Vethkai captain ordered, and the screen went dark. The raider accelerated toward the Defiance, its energy weapons already charging. Helena tracked it on the tactical display, calculating angles and trajectories. "The raider will be in optimal firing range in 4 minutes," she said. "They are using standard Vendari-class energy weapons. Effective against modern shields. Against our armor plating, mostly ineffective. It would take sustained fire over several hours to penetrate." Marcus smiled. "What about our weapons against their shields?" "Unknown. Kinetic accelerators have not been used in combat for decades. However, based on my calculations, the impact force should exceed their shield capacity by a significant margin." "How significant?" "Approximately 800%. The raider opened fire at maximum range. Blue energy bolts streaked through space, slamming into the Defiance's bow. The ship shuddered slightly. Warning lights flickered. The armor held. Hull integrity at 98%, Helena reported calmly. Returning fire. The Defiance's kinetic accelerators spoke for the first time in 60 years. The sound was incredible. Even through the hull, Marcus could hear the deep thunder of massive projectiles being hurled through space at a significant fraction of light speed. Each shot was a chunk of dense metal, accelerated by electromagnetic rails to speeds that modern ships simply could not match. The first projectile hit the raider's shields. The shields held for approximately half a second before collapsing entirely. The second projectile hit the hull. There was no explosion, no dramatic fireball. The raider simply came apart, torn in half by the force of the impact, its pieces spinning away into the darkness. The entire engagement had lasted less than 30 seconds. "Raider destroyed," Helena announced. "The remaining Vethkai vessels are..." They appeared to be attempting to verify sensor readings. "I do not think they believe what they just saw." "Neither do I," Marcus admitted. "Take us in." The Defiance advanced on the remaining pirates like a predator that had finally found prey worth hunting. The second raider tried to flee. Helena tracked it with cold precision and fired a single shot that destroyed its engines. The salvage vessel detached from the Stella Grace and attempted to hide behind an asteroid. Marcus ignored it for now. The command ship remained, its captain clearly trying to decide between fight and flight. Marcus made the decision for him. "Helena, target their weapons array. Disable them, don't destroy them. I want to have a conversation." The accelerators fired again, and the command ship's weapons disappeared in a shower of debris. "Channel open," Helena said. The Vethkai captain appeared on screen again. His expression had changed completely. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked very much like fear. What? What are you? He whispered. I'm human, Marcus replied. And this is a human ship, built for a war that your species probably doesn't even remember. We stopped building them because the galaxy told us they were obsolete, primitive, embarrassing. And here's the thing about human engineering. He leaned forward. We never build anything that breaks easy. The salvage vessel is attempting to flee, Helena reported. Let them go. Let them all go. Marcus kept his eyes on the Vethkai captain. Run back to your ports. Tell everyone what you saw here. Tell them that the old ships aren't dead. They were just sleeping. The Vethkai captain cut the transmission without a word. Within minutes, his damaged command ship was limping away, followed by the salvage vessel and the disabled raider. They left behind only debris and the Stellar Grace, which was already broadcasting messages of gratitude and disbelief. Marcus sat back in his chair and let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Helena, he said, remind me to buy a drink for whoever designed these guns. The lead engineer was a woman named Sarah Chun, Helena replied. No relation to you, as far as I am aware. She died 40 years ago. Then I'll pour one out for her. Marcus looked at the screen, where the Stellar Grace was visible against the star. The three cruisers appeared on the edge of the Korath system without warning. They were beautiful ships, sleek and angular, built by the finest Vendari shipyards with the latest technology. Their hulls were smooth and white, unmarked by battle damage or the wear of hard service. Each one cost more than the entire station they had come to threaten. Marcus watched them approach from the bridge of the Obstinate Defiance. Helena had detected them the moment they dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and the crew had been at battle stations ever since. 3 Vendari Tempest-class cruisers, Helena reported. Military grade, armed with plasma cannons and missile systems. Shields are at maximum. They are broadcasting no identification codes. Mercenaries, Rachel said from her station at engineering. The consortium hired killers to do what diplomats couldn't. Sensors show no other vessels in range, Jax added. Station security is monitoring, but not responding. They're not going to help us. Marcus had expected this. The consortium had given him a choice, and he had refused. Now they were showing him the consequences of that refusal. 3 modern warships against 1 ancient cruiser. To anyone watching, the outcome seemed obvious. To Marcus, it seemed like a fair fight. Helena, how long until they're in weapons range? 12 minutes at current approach speed. However, I am detecting an incoming transmission. One of the mercenary captains wishes to speak with you. Put them through. The screen flickered and a human face appeared. That surprised Marcus more than anything. He had expected Vendari, or perhaps one of the other species that worked as soldiers for hire. Instead, he was looking at a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and cold eyes. Captain Chun, she said, my name is Director Vance. I represent certain interests that have paid significant money to remove your ship from service. I wanted to offer you a final chance to surrender peacefully. And if I refuse, then my ships will destroy you. Vance leaned back in her command chair. I respect what you've done with that old wreck. It's impressive engineering, keeping something that ancient running. But 3 Tempest cruisers against 1 first contact relic? You don't have a chance. Marcus thought about arguing. He thought about explaining the battles the Defiance had won, the pirates it had broken, the impossible jobs it had completed. But he realized it would not matter. Director Vance saw what everyone else saw, an obsolete ship with outdated technology, crewed by humans who refused to accept progress. She did not understand. She could not understand. And Marcus found that he did not want to waste time trying to explain. Helena, he said calmly, end transmission and prepare for combat. The mercenary cruisers attacked in formation. Their plasma cannons lit up the darkness of space with brilliant blue fire, pouring energy into the Defiance's hull. Warning sirens screamed throughout the ship. Damage reports flooded the communication channels. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Rachel reported, her fingers flying across her console. "Sealing now. Secondary armor held, but the outer plating is gone. Point defense is engaged," Jocks added. "Missiles incoming? I'm taking them down, but there's a lot of them." The Defiance shook violently as another volley of plasma fire hit home. Marcus gripped his chair and watched the tactical display. The mercenary ships were fast and precise, circling the old cruiser like wolves around a wounded bear. Their weapons were sophisticated, their tactics modern. They had every advantage that technology could provide. But the Defiance was not dying. Its thick armor absorbed hit after hit, designed for exactly this kind of sustained bombardment. When systems failed, mechanical backups kicked in. When outer plating melted away, inner armor held firm. The ship groaned and shuddered and bled atmosphere from a dozen wounds, but it kept fighting. "Elena, target the lead cruiser," Marcus ordered. "Show them what obsolete looks like." The kinetic accelerators roared. The first shot hit the lead mercenary shields. Unlike the pirate raiders, these were military-grade barriers, designed to withstand significant punishment. The shields held, barely, flickering under the impact. The second shot struck the same point. The shields collapsed. The third shot hit the hull. The Vendari cruiser had been built for elegance and efficiency. Its hull was thin and light, designed to be protected by shields that everyone assumed would never fail. When the kinetic round punched through, it traveled the entire length of the ship before exiting the other side. The cruiser did not explode. It simply stopped moving, its vital systems destroyed in an instant. "One down," Helena announced. "The remaining vessels are..." They are attempting to adjust their strategy. The battle continued. It was brutal and ugly, and nothing like the clean engagements that modern navies train for. The mercenary ships poured fire into the Defiance, and the old warship absorbed it all, taking damage that would have crippled any modern vessel. Compartments flooded with vacuum. Systems failed and were replaced by backups. The crew fought fires and sealed breaches and kept the guns firing. Jocks took a hit from a secondary explosion, cutting his forehead open. He wiped the blood from his eyes and kept shooting. Rachel lost half her engineering console to an electrical fire. She switched to the mechanical controls and kept the engines running. Van, the Kralith who had joined them out of curiosity, proved his worth by crawling through damaged corridors to manually reset systems that could not be reached any other way. And slowly, inevitably, the Defiance began to win. The second mercenary cruiser fell when its engine section took a direct hit. The captain tried to withdraw, but the damage was too severe. The ship drifted, powerless, its crew abandoning in escape pods. The third cruiser, Director Vance's command ship, made a final, desperate attack. All weapons firing, shields at maximum. It charged directly at the Defiance in an attempt to overwhelm the old warship with concentrated firepower. "Elena," Marcus said, "put everything we have into the main accelerator." "Captain, that will drain our remaining power reserves." "I know. Do it anyway." The Defiance fired one final shot. The kinetic round was massive, the largest the accelerators could throw. It crossed the distance between the ships in less than a second, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. It hit the charging cruiser dead center, and the Vendari ship came apart like a broken toy, its pieces scattering across space. Silence fell over the bridge. Marcus sat in his chair, looking at the destruction displayed on the main screen. 3 of the galaxy's finest warships, reduced to debris by a vessel everyone had called worthless. "Damage report," he said quietly. "Significant," Helena replied. "Hull breaches on multiple decks. Primary reactor operating at 40% capacity. Secondary reactor offline. Tertiary reactor stable. Weapons systems heavily damaged. Shields. We never had shields. Crew status? All crew members alive. Multiple injuries, none critical. The ship held together, Captain, as it was designed to do. Marcus closed his eyes. He could feel the defiance around him, wounded but alive, still fighting even when every modern prediction said it should have been destroyed. Captain, Helena said, we are being hailed. Multiple sources. Who? Everyone. The screen split into dozens of feeds. News drones had arrived during the battle, broadcasting the entire engagement across the galaxy. Station Kara 7 was transmitting congratulations. Ships from a dozen species were requesting permission to approach and offer assistance. And somewhere in the background, Helena detected signals from Earth itself, where humans were watching their forgotten warship defy the odds once again. One signal stood out from the rest. A young Kralith journalist, the same one who had covered the rescue at Callisto Passage, had somehow gotten a direct channel to the bridge. Captain Chun, she said, her mandibles clicking with excitement. The whole galaxy just watched you win an impossible battle. They told everyone that human ships were obsolete, primitive, worthless. But the obstinate defiance proved them wrong. I have to ask, Captain. Everyone wants to know. Was it worth it? Marcus looked around the bridge. At the damaged consoles and the flickering lights and the crew members who had fought alongside him. At the ship that had saved them all, the ship that had been forgotten and abandoned and dismissed. He thought about the 247 people who had died here 60 years ago, saving a galaxy that would never remember their names. He thought about all the human ships that were flying again, crewed by people who finally understood what their ancestors had built. He thought about the consortium and the mercenaries and everyone else who had tried to erase human history. She just needed someone to believe in her, Marcus said. The journalist's mandibles twitched. That's not really an answer. It's the only answer that matters. The broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. Within days, more human ships were being pulled from storage and salvage yards. Within weeks, a loose organization began to form, connecting the crews of these ancient vessels. They called themselves the Second Fleet, a name that had not been used since the First Contact Wars. The Galactic Trade Consortium issued no official statement. Their mercenary forces had been destroyed in front of the entire galaxy, and any further action would only draw more attention to their failure.